The Ohio State Buckeyes have landed in the desert of Las Vegas, Nevada for Big Ten Media Days, which means that the season is around the corner. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ohio State at the Voice of College Football. I am your host, Garrison Gaddy. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can be aware of all the content that we bring to you. And be sure to hit that notification bell if you like it. Now let's get to the action. The Ohio State Buckeyes, of course, landed in Big Ten Media Days. Ryan Day, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, and star receiver Jeremiah Smith. Let's start with Ryan Day here and the things that he had to say. Picked out a few things. I'm going to start with, first off, when they got to the hotel, the receptionist asked if there was anyone that was 21 years old so that they can get to the room. So Ryan Day had to check them all in. Of course, Caleb Downs being a little bit younger. Jeremiah's a sophomore. And for all those I forgot, Sonny Styles got to Ohio State at the age of 17 when he reclassified. So, yeah, young guys in the team, some really young leaders, but great players at the same time. So Ryan Day was asked about the defense and the things that Matt Patricia has changed or what's the same. And these are some of the things that he said. He was very excited about the defense and that they were happy to keep some of the continuity. They wanted to keep the Buckeye defense, the Ohio State defense. So that would include the Ohio State Buckeyes have landed in the desert of Las Vegas, Nevada for Big Ten Media Days, which means that the season is around the corner, everybody. Hello and welcome to Ohio State, the voice of college football. I am your host, Garrison Gaddy. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you like the content, please hit that notification bell so you will be aware of all the time that we are live on the network. So the Ohio State Buckeyes landed in with Ryan Day, Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, and linebacker Sonny Styles. And to start off, I mean, they got to the reception desk, and the guys couldn't check themselves in because number 21, of course, Jeremiah being a true sophomore, Caleb Downs being on the younger end. And then for all those that forgot, Sonny Styles reclassified early, so he got to Ohio State when he was 17. Some people may forget that. But let's start here with Ryan Day said about the defense, which I think for me personally and for a lot of people, this is what they really want to hear. Of course, with Jim Knowles leaving and a lot of the faces being new on that side from the number one defense in the country last year. And one of the big reasons why Ohio State won the national championship. Ryan Day said he was very excited about the defense, said that he was very happy that they were able to keep some of the continuity. They still want to use the defense that they have for the past few years. It proved successful, of course, but Matt Patricia, he has been able to bring some of his own things, change up some things in the defense, have his own spin on it, which I do think is important. Matt Patricia being a multiple defense type of guy, 3-4, 4-3, nickel dime, he runs it all. But of course, Ryan Day, and he talked about this also with the offense, which we'll talk about later. It was truly important to him that nothing really changed. And he talked about, like, even on the rest of the defensive staff and how they kept everyone else. I mean, outside of one assistant being one that went to Texas. But you look at the back end, you still got your coach. You look at the linebackers, you still got your coach. You look at the safeties, you got Gary Area. He takes a step up there, but he's been around. I think that Ryan Day is happy that even though you have a new defensive coordinator, everything else is still the same. The players are all the same from last year. Of course, you're bringing a few transfer and Bo Agason and a couple others at defensive end, but outside of that, it's all the same. And I think that for Ryan Day going to this season, especially when you start off with Texas, who with Sarkisian, Arch Manning, and the rest of that offense, you need that. You can't go around changing a bunch of things because that can prove for failure. That we've seen it plenty of times. And we've seen it at Ohio State, and not too long ago, Ryan Day had to change the defenses after his first year because of that reason. And the first year it got kind of rocky. Now you go into a season where most of the coaching staff is the same as I said earlier. Matt Patricia, man, this was one of the biggest things that I worried about when he got to the staff. Would he be able to recruit? Would he want to recruit? Can he build relationships? And Ryan Day says that he's built those relationships with the players. The guys love him. The guys love him. I was actually talking to my guy Mike last night really late, and we were just talking about the relationship between him and guys like CJ Hicks and how close it is. Talks about the recruits. They love him. They love him. The recruits say that he connects well with them, so that they love his personality, and that's all you need to hear. That's all you need to hear. And we've already known that Matt Patricia has already been on the recruiting trail for the Ohio State Buckeyes. So yeah, I'm really happy to hear about that. Thought that um, Matt Patricia on the way in, there might be some bumps, and I think there will be some bumps on the field, but everything else seems to be going just smoothly. All you got to do now is work in August and then get on the field for that first week of the year. Um, he talked about Jeremiah Smith, and he was asked about Jeremiah Smith's comments on Michigan. And he said that he's very competitive, and I think we all know that about Jeremiah. Uh, of course, we're going to talk about him here in a little bit too. But he's not used to losing, as Ryan Day said. He's been a winning player since he was in high school, been a winning player since he was in Pee Wee. Said, after that Oregon loss, very angry. So I could imagine how he was after that loss against the team up north. But on the comments that he made about how he doesn't plan on losing them while he's there over the next 2 years, he said when he tells you something, you better believe it. Because we all know that Jeremiah is not a talker. He's not a man of many words, as Ryan Day said, but when he does, you listen. My grandpa's kind of like that, Reverend Willie Abrams. My grandpa's a really quiet guy, but when he talks, you listen, and you probably should believe him. And it's really good to hear that a guy like Jeremiah at such a young age, what comes out, what he says holds a lot of reverence. And to have that the leadership at that young age that he is at, and a lot of guys can play great, but it doesn't mean you're a great leader. And it looks like he is stepping into that role, as Ryan Day pointed out here in his interview at Big Ten Media Days. He was also asked about the quarterback battle, and now he said it's neck and neck. I tend to lean on the side of trusting my head coach, especially when Ryan Day's never been much of a liar. He doesn't really pull you by the arm. He tells you what he means, and he means what he says. So as of right now, I do personally believe that Julian Samuel will end up being the quarterback, but he said it's neck and neck. Said that you can't make that decision until you see what's on the field. And of course, Ryan Day has never named a starter before the fall, and we're just now getting into the next month here. Up in August is coming here soon. And so nothing new from Ryan Day about when it comes to quarterbacks. I think he's running it just as he always has, and that's what you want. You want to keep things consistent, and that's one of the biggest words you're ever going to hear in football. Said that the players like them both, and I can see that. Lincoln Kenosis is a very cool guy. I would at least from the outside looking in. I don't know him personally, but you look at his personality, you can tell that guys gravitate towards him. When it comes to Julian Sand, was at Alabama for a hot bagel and a coffee, comes to Ohio State, thankfully. And it looks like the guys are connecting to him, and they have been. A lot of the players have had a lot of great things to say about him, even last year when he wasn't the starter. For Ryan, he said the biggest thing is putting them in competitive situations on the field when it comes to this fall. I would love to see what that looks like. Of course, not every practice is going to be open. I'm sure some of them will. And we're going to get a lot of news from guys like Steve Hellwagen, who was also there. It was also awesome to hear him, some of his questions. But I'm really confident that at the end of the day, Ryan Day is going to make the right quarterback decision, as he always has. So really, really happy to hear what he said about them. That's neck and neck, that that he's putting them in competitive situations. That's all you really want to see. When it comes to talking about the transition of the offense coming from Chip Kelly, a very tenured offensive mind, one of the greatest offensive minds in college football history, and now you go into Brian Hartline, BH, and he said that the offense is still very similar. And I am not amazed by that. I really am. I'm sorry, I'm really not. I think that over the last few years, and Ryan Day talked about it, Brian Hartline and Ryan Day have been together for 9 years now. You would have to imagine that Brian Hartline, being the football savant that he is, and sometimes I think people that on the outside of the fan base forget he played at a high level at Ohio State at wide receiver, had a pretty good, I would say a really good compared to the average the average NFL player, had a good career over for the Miami Dolphins. And then he gets to Ohio State, worked his way up, and Ryan Day said, this is a natural transition into the offensive coordinator position for him. Said that they started working on things from the time over the last few years. I'm not surprised by these things. I think Ryan Day knew at some point, and of course, we talked about it, 2-3 years now, 2 years ago now, when they thought about making Brian Hartline the offensive coordinator. It didn't end up happening. But I think that the point to make here is that this is something that Brian Hartline this has been something in the making for a long time now. And that's why when I talk about this offense and I talk about Brian Hartline, I'm not that worried. I'm really not. I think that come this season, after the first few games, I think he's going to get into a rhythm that will satisfy the fan base and satisfy Ryan Day. Said, keeping the offense, as I said earlier, said that, last year, Chip Kelly made some changes to the numbering system, some of the plays and the alignments, that they've kept it the same. They have kept it the same. And that's all you want to hear. And of course, BH is going to have his own little spin to it, just as Matt Patricia is going to. But the most important thing for Ryan Day is keeping it the same. And he mentioned Nick Saban, because over the course of Nick Saban's career, as a very long career at Alabama, he went through a lot of coaching changes, but he always kept it the same. And that's what he's trying to emulate, what he's trying to mimic. And again, I think that Ryan Day, when you look at him, I think he's running the Ohio State program as it should be. I think when you come behind a guy like Urban Meyer, who he never really stayed somewhere for too long, right? As a Nick Saban did, but Urban was just like Nick Saban in the fact that he was able to keep things the same. Coordinators change, players change, but the system is the system. So really, really excited to hear that. Really, really happy that there hasn't been much of a change there. So things can, the continuity is still there as it is on the defense, on the offense. Talked about Tyler Bowen, the new offensive line coach. We've talked about this plenty of times here. He has coordinator experience, especially when it comes to the run game. And Brian Hartline wanted him there also because it's very important that you have someone there with coordinator experience, because when you're in the coaching room, when you get the headset on, there's a lot of voices going on, but you need people that know what they're doing. And I think Tyler Bowen is going to prove to be a great asset to the team this year, starting very early in his Ohio State career. Again, really happy about that. Talked about how, the thing he's watching for Brian Hartline, the thing that he wants him to work on, he says easy to call plays. The challenge is, the script. And if you're one with the script is, you could call a play in the first quarter that's setting up something in the third quarter. Or you can call a play in week 2 that you're setting up for week 7. So again, Brian Hartline is going to be a work in progress, but I do believe that he has the right people around him and the talent around him, and he has the leader above him. They're going to make sure that he's put in the best situations so that the Ohio State offense is put in the best situations. Now let's get to some of the players, not some of the players, but let's start with Jeremiah Smith here. What's his biggest thing he's been working on? Being consistent. Again, that word you're going to hear a lot in football. And for Jeremiah, there's really nothing else for him to do except for getting better. Consistency does breed getting better, in my opinion. So really happy to hear that out of him. Not surprised to hear that out of him. For him is, it's winning every spring drill, and in which they said he has been doing. They say, there's not one workout where he's not the best. There's not one drill where he's not the best. And for those who didn't play football, practice is not fun in football. Not usually it's not. It's a lot of work. It's a grind. And so the fact that every day he's in there putting the work in, not slacking, and being an example to his teammates as a leader should, and because he is a leader now, that's awesome. He was asked, does he think he's where he wants to be right now as a sophomore, and he said no. And of course, Jeremiah's not going to figure that out yet until he gets on the field. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe there's things that right now today that he sees himself as a sophomore. He said, no. I gotta get better at that. I gotta get better at this. So again, for a lot of guys that are supremely talented and have the gifts that he has, it is very easy to be complacent, and that's in any aspect in life. But it's really refreshing to hear that out of him. Uh, yeah, it's really refreshing. He was asked about how he handles the noise and all the hype that's around him. He said this simply: focus on today. Uh, Again, love it. And then when asked about the quarterbacks, he said they both put the work in. Said that they've both been leaders, Julian and Lincoln, and said that when he said to be more like leaders, he stopped and said be more like Will Howard. And I love hearing that because Will Howard is someone that I truly adore as an Ohio State fan, and I think that he is. I think that Will Howard, his impact is going to be felt this year on the quarterback room. No matter who the quarterback is, I think they are going to try to mimic him, and I think that's the best way to go about it. And then just asked about how's it feel to be in the wide receiver room right now and all the talent they have when it comes to Cardinal Tate, Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham, who he came in with, a 5-star recruit also, and then the rest of the guys, the younger guys in the room. He said, man, there's a lot of talent there, and he's excited to see what's going to happen, because the truth of the matter is, guys, that a lot of these kids or young men could be wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, even as freshmen in other places, guys like Quincy Porter, guys like Mylan Graham. So excited to hear that. And also this, I caught this. He said, he talked about what Zone 6 has been over the last 20 years, which just shows that he has respect of the wide receiver room at Ohio State, which I do believe to be. Actually, I don't believe this to be. I think it's a fact that, when it comes to college football history, Ohio State has bred the best wide receivers. So yeah, that's Jeremiah Smith there, and let's move on to Caleb Downs. So he was asked about just the leadership role, and he said, for him, it's just being calm in battle, and being a voice to those who haven't been in these situations, in terms of being a starter. Very important to hear that from him again. The offense, I think, is going to be the offense, but the defense is what people, I think, are going to really focus on this year. And I think that Caleb Downs is I think he's the most important player on this football team. Because I think he's going to be if I had to rank or put tiers of leaders, I would put him number 1. I truly would. I think that if it wasn't for I truly believe this upcoming draft, he's going to be the best player at his position. I'm sorry, he's going to be the best player despite position. That doesn't mean he's going to go number 1, but I think if you took everyone at their position, I think he's the best. So great to hear that from him. Said that the intensity has been high. Said that that's where they have to grow. But he said they said the defense still has to grow, but there's still intensity. The reason I like hearing that is because I said before, I do think that the defense is gonna have its growing pains. The one way to get around that is to be intense and to go full bore. So really excited to see what that defense looks like, especially in the front seven, when it comes to intensity. When talking about the losses on the defense, he said with every loss, there is an opportunity to grow. You look at guys like Edric Houston. No, Edric did start 2 games last year. It's still a different role for him. Guys like Caden McDonald, Kenyatta Jackson Jr., who we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Guys like Jermaine Matthews. A lot of different roles, guys. But it's not just that Ohio State recruits talent. I think Ryan Day goes about recruiting the right guys that could potentially be leaders. And I think that most of the guys in this defense can step into that role. Talking about Matt Patricia, say he's a savvy football mind. With that being said, I believe Caleb Downs is the smartest, and I can't. There's nothing I can quantify with this, but I think Caleb Downs is the smartest player in college football. And I think to have a guy like him with a legit rocket scientist like Matt Patricia, it's going to really work well, especially with the new defense and on the back end at safety. And mind you, Caleb Downs plays close to the line a lot too. So you have a guy that can quarterback back there and make sure that guys are in the right position. So yeah, really happy about that. So there have been some changes on defense, but he said there's nothing to be worried about. Nothing to be worried about. Finish off here, Sonny Styles, one of my favorite Buckeyes in general, like, since I've been alive. Uh, the first thing they talked about was some of the guys on this defense and who can be a leader. And the first name he said was Kenyatta Jackson Jr. Kenyatta is a junior on the team right now. Was a top 100 player out of high school. Really highly touted recruit. Very talented. 6'5", 6'6", 250, 60 pounds. He's a freak athlete, and I think that when you look at Kenyatta in terms of the front seven, you lose JTT and you lose Jack Sawyer. You need the net. Who are, I think, yeah, both of them are top 5 recruits in their class. You need the next talented guy, the uber talented guy, to step up, and I think Kenyatta is going to be that guy, as Sonny says here also. When talking about doubt from the media and talking heads, he said, he said they hear it, but he said at the same time, they already know they have something to prove, and they believe they have something to prove, and that they had put last year behind them. They talked about how they've taken away all the banners across the Woody, things from the championship. Of course, if something stay up, like the trophy, but all those things, they don't talk about it. He said, down the road you can look back on it, things that you always remember. But as Caleb Downs said, you got to focus on today, and it looks like Sonny has that same mindset. Then he was asked again about guys on the team. He said Kenyatta again, and he said he's going to be a monster, which I believe that too. I think most do also, and said that he's made a huge jump in his mindset. The game of football is 50% physical and 50% mental, and so when you hear that from a guy like Sonny Styles, who again, Sonny's not a talker, but like Jeremiah Smith, but I do believe that when he talks, you should probably believe it. Not probably, you should believe it, and you should adhere to it. So glad to hear about that. And then on his relationship with Matt Patricia, and if you can't tell, there's a theme here. But he says his relationship was, in quotes, so close. Say he's a great teacher, and they puts them in position to make key plays. Again, I was, I'm bringing my boy Mike from the Royal Famous Buckeye show, which you guys can catch on Wednesdays at 7:30 every week. But Mike and I were talking last night. He said, he's been saying this, talking about how he thinks that Matt Patricia is going to let guys go make plays. Over the last few years, Ohio State's defense has been more bend don't break. And I agree with Mike. I think that, and with Sonny, I think that Matt Patricia is going to let guys go play. Most NFL guys will let their plays go do that. So again, really excited to hear what these guys had to say and what Ryan Day had to say. Again, it lets you know that we're getting closer to the season, and man, it feels good. The summer's always great, but when fall time comes, there's nothing like it. Again, everyone, please be sure to like, share, subscribe to the channel if you like the content. And as always, OHIO.